Today on the College Football Recruiting Show, we are less than 3 weeks away from the first transfer portal window. Our Matt Zenitz joins with exclusive intel on players and programs to watch and how coaching changes could affect the market. Then, which programs need to take a swing in the portal? Our Brandon Marcello is breaking down the biggest needs for the biggest buyers this cycle. And Tennessee tries to play spoiler against Georgia on the field and off it. The recruiting battles to watch this weekend in Neyland Stadium. All this and more coming up on the College Football Recruiting Show starting right now. Good afternoon and welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I'm Grace Remington with Blair Angulo, bringing you the latest from the recruiting trail. Before we begin, you already know what to do. Please like this stream, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a thing. We're going to start with some breaking news out of Ann Arbor first. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh have decided to accept the remainder of the Big Ten's 3-game suspension, which means Harbaugh will miss the final 2 games of the season against Maryland and Ohio State. So, Blair, your initial thoughts on how this will impact Michigan the rest of the way?
I think from a recruiting perspective, it clarifies a lot of things for not only the commits that are already in Michigan's class, but also the recruits that are looking to potentially sign with the Wolverines. I think this clears up whatever question marks, and it just kind of allows them to focus on the here and the now.
All right, well, let's get into today's top headlines. It is flip season, and 4-star defensive lineman Nasir Johnson has flipped his commitment from Florida to Georgia. He had been flirting with the Dogs, attending their games against Kentucky, Florida, and Ole Miss. Blair, what does he add to the Dogs' 2024 class?
A big and explosive interior defensive lineman with a super high ceiling, according to our scouting team. The Bulldogs know how to utilize those big bodies up front, and Nasir Johnson has a chance to be special in Athens.
4-star safety and Minnesota commit Coy Parrish tells 24/7 Sports that he's looking to take an official visit to Ohio State after his senior season. He verbally committed to the Gophers in April, but the Buckeyes just offered him a scholarship last Monday. Blair, how do you feel about Ohio State's chances of pulling off the flip?
If a player is excited to go check out another school, you have to feel good about a potential flip, especially this late in the recruiting cycle. Ohio State already has 3 commitments from safeties in this class, and they were serious players for KJ Bolden. So Coy Parrish gets to Columbus, and that could be a done deal as well.
The top player in the 2026 class, quarterback Julian Lewis, will visit Ohio State this weekend for the Buckeyes' final home game against Minnesota. He's been committed to USC since late August and attended their November 4th game against Washington. He's also been to a couple Georgia games. So, Blair, how do you like the Buckeyes' chances of pulling off this flip?
I'm probably not as confident in Ohio State with Julian Lewis, but it's still very early. And the interesting dynamics working here is that if we recall, 5-star Dylan Raiola was also committed to Ohio State at one point, ends up committing to Georgia, was also leading USC at some point. So it seems like all 3 schools are in the same quarterback battles.
And wide receiver Raymond Cottrell becomes the first player from Texas A&M to seek a transfer. He is currently ranked the #1 transfer in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal player rankings. Jimbo Fisher's firing on Sunday triggered the immediate 30-day window for players to enter their names into the portal. Now for more portal news, we got a portal edition of our own. It's our national college football reporter, Matt Zenitz, his first show with us. Thanks for being here, Matt. Matt, as you know, portal numbers have increased exponentially since the portal era began 5 years ago. What are the early expectations for how hectic this cycle could be?
Pretty hectic. Definitely expecting to be busy these next couple of months. So for me, I keep a running tab this time of year, just different names that are coming up on my end through conversations with coaches, people at the personnel level around the country. And during the course of the last couple of weeks, it's become more and more clear that not only is this going to be another eventful portal cycle, but specifically my expectation at this point is that we're going to see a number of veteran, accomplished quarterbacks that ultimately make the move and go into the portal, including some guys that entered this season with draftable grades from the NFL.
Matt, I think now we're all familiar with the recruiting cycle, right? I know that the transfer portal is a thing that happens, and everyone is seasoned now. I think they know what to expect, and I think that's also contributed to the number of portal entries. But the coaching carousel is another thing that also impacts things. How do you think the current situation with coaching changes could impact the portal?
Oh, A&M's an easy one to look at, right? So there are a lot of staffs around the country, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, that are very much monitoring that situation and roster at Texas A&M. And I can tell you just through some conversations that I've had the last couple of days with staffers at some high-level places around the country that they are very much monitoring, and some of those high-level places around the country are very much monitoring the likes of Evan Stewart, Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, LT Overton, some of those talented former five-star recruits that have done good stuff at A&M the last couple of years, just in case those guys do ultimately make the move and go into the portal.
A quick reminder, please like this video and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Matt, there's at least 5 head coaching openings right now. So as we shift silly season into higher gear, what are some other coaching jobs that could open in the near future that may affect the action we see in the transfer portal?
Yeah, so an obvious one to keep an eye on going into this weekend. So our UCLA site obviously reported in the last couple of days just about the likelihood of Chip Kelly being out at UCLA. And I'd say an interesting individual situation to keep an eye on regarding that is their 5-star freshman quarterback, Dante Moore. So Dante had kind of an interesting situation even before these recent developments with Chip, where he took over as the starter early in the year. I think it was game 2 that he stepped in as their starting quarterback, started 5 games. It was up and down, and then was ultimately benched. And obviously that's never an ideal or easy situation for a quarterback and his family and all to deal with. And it's never a good sign when a kid's parents are retweeting fans on Twitter sharing their thoughts on the quarterback situation and questioning just the handling of that. So that had become an interesting and weird situation to a certain degree, even before these recent developments with Chip. But one thing that I can say very confidently right now is just that there are definitely some staffs around the country that are keeping an eye on that situation with Dante specifically. And I think that's picked up even more now just with these recent developments with Chip, because even though Dante had been up and down during his time as a starter, and I think had almost as many interceptions as he had touchdown passes, still is talented enough that it was ranked among the top 5 overall players in this past recruiting class. And I don't think schools around the country have lost sight of just the ability and potential that he has for moving forward, and did flash some during his time as a starter.
That would be a huge name in the transfer portal if Dante Moore eventually ends up in there. And you mentioned UCLA, Chip Kelly, the move that could be happening, and that's according to our UCLA site, Bruin Report Online. Who are some names, Matt, that maybe you've heard affiliated with the Bruins? Because we know you have your ear to the streets.
Yeah, a couple of the big ones right now, I would say, are Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. It's a very popular name right now because not only is Jonathan coming up on my end with UCLA, but it's coming up with Michigan State also to go along with the Mike Elkos of the world. But I would say with UCLA, Jonathan, Jed Fish are 2 of the early ones coming up on my end. I'd be curious if somebody like Lane Kiffin ultimately was a possibility for that also. So Lane obviously has ties to LA. I'm sure Lane wouldn't mind getting a chance to face off against his old school, USC. And obviously LA is an ideal place to live. And I think Lane enjoyed his time out there just from a living standpoint. But at the same time, 2 of the main names that have come up early on with that one have been a combination of Jonathan Smith and then Jed Fish, who's done a great job at Arizona to go along with that.
Matt, before we let you go, we have a quick viewer question from Jonathan. He asks, who will be the next head coach of Texas A&M football?
It's It's a popular question right now.
Right.
So a couple of the names that have come up the last couple of days for me, and by no means am I saying that either one of these are going to end up getting the job, but Jeff Traylor is somebody who to me clearly seems to be on the radar at the very least for A&M. Jeff is universally loved in the state of Texas, obviously just an extremely respected figure in that state. It seems like it's potentially even reached a point where there's maybe been some preliminary communication there. Lance Leipold's another one at Kansas, has done a heck of a job there. It seems to be another one who maybe is on the early radar for A&M. And then you have said some interesting names like Dabo at Clemson who have come up where I'm not sure where things stand with that and just how realistic it is that somebody like Dabo could be a possibility. But one interesting note with Dabo specifically that one of my colleagues, John Talty, brought up is that Dabo played at Alabama under Gene Stallings, former Alabama and Texas A&M head coach Gene Stallings, began his coaching career under Gene at Alabama. Gene was a member of the Board of Regents at Texas A&M, so you have that connection there where it makes it a little bit more interesting with Dabo, who's reached that point at Clemson where obviously things have been up and down the last couple years. Sometimes you reach a point in life, regardless of how great a situation has been, where it's refreshing to get just a fresh start. And I think you guys know when you deal with coaching searches to the level of a Texas A&M or even going back a couple of years ago, like USC and LSU, when you're dealing with these high level places, there are different names that will come up, but it's funny how things have a way similar to those two searches I mentioned, where at the end of the process, you ultimately have some huge name that administration clearly wanted to make a significant splash, and somebody who you weren't necessarily expecting to be available at the beginning of the process or to end up at that place ultimately ends up there. So I don't know if that ends up happening with A&M, but it's just something that I'm keeping in mind, just knowing the caliber of job that is.
Lots of intriguing options. Matt Zenitz with the latest. Thanks so much, and welcome to the team. For more of his work, you can find him on Twitter at @mzenitz or read his articles on 247sports.com. And for all the transfer portal news you can handle, our Transfer Portal Palooza is back on the 247 Sports YouTube channel December 4th when that first portal window opens. Our panel of experts is live starting at 10 a.m. Eastern all morning, all afternoon. And then we're back with another marathon show for National Signing Day, December 20th. Subscribe to youtube.com/247sports. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a show from us. Now, last season, Deion Sanders and Colorado made history, completely overhauling the Buffs roster and bringing in 51 new players through the transfer portal. And they did overachieve, beating their expected wins total of 3.5. Now, will this form of roster building become the norm? That's TBD, but let's take a look at programs in the upcoming cycle with some major needs. And with that, we'll welcome in our national college football reporter, Brandon Marcello, with his list of top 5 buyers in the portal. And Brandon, we'll start with the obvious. Colorado likely to draw attention again for its portal usage as it heads to the Big 12. What position group are they pursuing?
Boy, they need offensive linemen. You guys have seen Shedeur Sanders running for his life out there. They're 107th nationally this season in pressure rate. Shedeur has been doing an amazing job there, but he needs help along that offensive line. They brought in 7 transfers this past offseason, but only 3 of them are really contributing all that much. And by the way, 2 of them came from Kent State. The offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, came from Kent State, and his future is in question as well. So you wonder, what's that offensive line even going to look like? They need linemen now. Deion Sanders, within the last couple of weeks, even said, big picture, you got to go get new linemen. That's the picture, and I'm going to paint it perfectly. They have got to hit the transfer portal and get some linemen, and that's difficult. It's one of the most difficult positions to secure top-tier talent because a lot of those guys, they stay at home. They stay at their current school. With that NIL money, you start spending that a little bit more. Colorado, they're not going to be as heavy in the portal this year, but the offensive line, they're going to go straight after.
Brandon, we know that he brought his luggage with him to Boulder. He probably needs the big, heavy-duty size ones for this portal. That's probably the difference, right, between them taking a big leap and taking a huge leap right now this season and the first year under Deion Sanders. At number 4, Brandon, you have Notre Dame as well trying to fill a need this offseason.
Yeah, I think the offense there at Notre Dame is going to look a little bit different going into the next season. Sam Hartman, the quarterback there, he's going to be gone. They've got a bunch of young receivers there on the roster who've been thrown into the fire this year because of injuries. And it looks like the coaching staff doesn't really have a lot of trust in them. Not really throwing the ball down the field as much here in this last half of the season. Sam Hartman's numbers have dropped as a result. I do think in the next couple of weeks, those numbers are going to go up because of the competition they're facing on that schedule. But they have got to hit the portal and go find some receivers, maybe get 2 of them. They might also be looking at the quarterback spot, but right now it's very, very clear they need some veteran leadership in that room at the receiver spot.
Brandon, next at number 3, you have FSU. Mike Norvell has never been portal shy. Where is he shopping?
Well, listen, they have got a strong roster even going into next season. Of course, they're going to probably want to maybe look at quarterback, but the really big one for me is that edge. You got to replace Jared Verse. He demands so much attention rushing the passer that he's going to be a huge, huge loss here in the offseason. And you look, they've got bodies on that roster, but they don't have anybody dynamic. Patrick Payton's coming back. He's got about 29 to 30 quarterback hurries this season. But outside of that, they don't really have like a superstar guy or even a guy you might say he would repeat his name 2 or 3 times on Saturdays on these game broadcasts. So they have got to go find an elite pass rusher.
At number 2, you have the USC Trojans. They're no strangers to the transfer portal either. What will Lincoln Riley be looking to fill?
You know, they got 4 linemen committed right now, but they need some veteran guys to come in to fill some spots. They got a 5th-year senior who's leaving there at center, some very critical spots to fill there. And this just tells you how much better USC could be even offensively. Consider this. Caleb Williams, who's dynamic, as we all know, at quarterback, he's number 1 in being able to extend plays, according to Pro Football Focus's data, 2.84 seconds before he gets pressure. But the pressure rate allowed by the USC offensive line is one of the worst in the country at 72nd nationally. So Caleb Williams is taking chicken salad and whatever you want to say the saying is. But to me, they've got to go hit that transfer portal and bring in some help along that offensive line. Everybody's going to be focused on the quarterback spot. Who follows Caleb Williams? Should he go to the NFL, which he probably will, we all know. But that offensive line is going to have to start there because I think that offense could take a huge step back. As much as everybody talks about that defense, that offense could take a huge step back if they don't fill some holes there on the offensive line.
And your number 1 team in need is LSU, which really just needs an entire defensive reset. But which position group do you think is the biggest need for them?
Man, that defensive backfield. I mean, listen, they've been hamstrung by injuries. They had 4 transfers come in. They haven't been able to contribute as much as they want to because of injuries or other off-the-field situations. And here's the other thing. High school recruiting isn't going so well in the defensive backfield right now. They had 5 commitments. That's down to 3. In fact, they just had a decommitment on Monday back there. So they've got to go find some immediate help, maybe get 2 guys at the cornerback spot in particular. That pass defense, guys, if they had any semblance of life back there, this LSU team would be contending for the SEC West title, if not winning it. And Jaden Daniels, a quarterback, just carrying that team. The pass defense this year, 110th nationally, allowing 6.5 yards after the catch. Bad stuff. They need bodies.
It's a wild stat. Quick reminder to the viewer, please like this stream, hit the thumbs up button at the bottom of the video. Brandon, we have a viewer question for you. They ask, which position do the majority of teams need to aim for in the portal this year?
Oh, quarterback by far. My colleague Chris Hummer had a great piece today on the portal needs. I counted 18 teams that had quarterback at like the number 1 or number 2 spot there. There's going to be a lot of big-time programs, especially in the ACC, up to maybe half of the ACC teams. They're going to go portal shopping for quarterbacks. And look in the SEC as well. Several teams there, including Auburn, might go portal shopping as well. I think there's going to be 1 or 2 big quarterbacks enter the portal. Things to watch there. Obviously at Texas, Malik Murphy potentially. Who knows? But listen, there are some big-time teams here, some blue blood teams that are going to go portal shopping for quarterbacks.
18 teams in need of a QB. Wow. Brandon, thanks for joining us. And for more of Brandon's work and for more portal updates, class rankings, player grades, and more, be sure to visit 247sports.com and subscribe for VIP content. Texas A&M fired Jimbo Fisher after 6 seasons on Sunday, and now it's open season on a roster that ranks 4th nationally in the 247 Sports Talent Composite. The 30-day window for players to enter the portal is now open. These are the top 9 players that A&M cannot afford to lose. That's according to our Chance Linton. You can find his article on the transfer portal homepage on 247sports.com. Well, good luck to the Futures Aggies coach, because those players are going to be hot commodities in the transfer portal market. Our Smoke Dixon has picked his top 4 from the list, and he joins me now to break down their skill sets and potential moves. Smoke, we'll start with the quarterback, Connor Wigman. He had a promising start to the season, 4 games before his season-ending foot injury in late September. Where do you think he goes?
Well, Connor, I'm going to send you down to Happy Valley. I'm going to send you down to Clemson with Coach Sweeney. Typically, Coach Sweeney doesn't want to go into the portal and go portal shopping, but that quarterback that you have down there not giving you a chance to win championship. You're a championship program. So I'm going to send you a guy down there. When healthy, this past year, when healthy, this guy's shown you that he has the talent to throw the route tree. When the plays break down, he has enough ability and athletic ability to extend plays and create explosive plays for other receivers down there. It's a talented guy that can throw the route tree that you need in your building. I'm going to go with Connor Wigman as my guy to Clemson.
That would be a massive change for Dabo, going from anti-portal to your starting quarterback, getting him from there. Next, we'll go to defensive lineman Walter Nolan. He's part of a defensive unit that everybody in college football wants a crack at. Where do you think the former 5-star could end up?
Well, here, I'm going to keep it real simple. You're not even going to have to get out of the state. I'm going to send you down to Texas. I'm going to send you down with Coach Sarkisian and one of the better defensive line coaches in America, Bo Davis. This young man gives you the ability to play against the run. He's stout, strong at the point of attack, can disrupt when he's a pass rusher. And at the end of the day, we're keeping you where you don't have to change around your money in NIL because it's tax-free state for income.
There you go. All right, we'll look at wide receiver Evan Stewart, best offensive player on the Aggies roster. There were actually some rumors swirling last year about him leaving College Station. He decides to stay. Might not be the case this year, as wide receiver is something everyone's looking for around the country. Where do you think he might end up?
Well, I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to send him down to my alma mater. I'm going to send him down to University of Alabama. The last time Alabama had the rideouts, national championship. This year, I'm going to give you an explosive receiver, vacuum-type hands as a receiver, route run, explosive player. And I'm going to give you somebody with Jalen Milroe that can help this young man develop further. This is a championship type of guy with explosive ability. In order to score a touchdown, you need a guy like this in the SEC.
I like that one. And your final player, Edge Shamar Turner. He's the 2nd highest graded defensive player on the roster, according to PFF. Started all 10 games this season for the Aggies. Where do you think his future home could be?
I'm going to take him out in the South. I'm
Okay.
going to put you out west, but you're also going into Big Ten country right now. So in the Big Ten, you need a big, long, athletic, thick guy outside as the edge defender with the ability to play the run, set the edge, and also has some ability to put the hair on the back of your neck standing up because his ability to come off the edge. And when it gets down to the sub package on 3rd down, you can knock him inside. Just a versatile defensive lineman that I'm going to give out to Oregon, and Coach Lane's going to have fun with him.
All right, lots of shakeup coming with this Aggies roster. Thank you, Smoke. And for more player tape breakdowns from Smoke and the latest intel from all our experts, stay tuned to the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss an update.
Georgia and Tennessee, a rivalry that has spanned nearly 125 years. And there have been some absolute classics.
Dobbs heaves it, bunched up in the end zone. It's caught! It is caught! Jawan Jennings!
But flashing forward to the present, the Georgia Bulldogs are staring down college football immortality with a chance to three-peat, something no program has done in the modern era.
Only it matters is you're playing on the road in the SEC in a really tough environment. It's different, especially when you go to play a team as talented as Tennessee is.
And while the Dogs certainly control their own destiny, the Volunteers still have an opportunity to play spoiler, potentially creating chaos in the playoff picture.
We understand the quality of the opponent that's coming to town this week. Our guys understand who they are, what they're about, and the way that they're going to play, and it'll be a great test for us.
It's the Dogs and Falls in front of 100,000 plus. Drive for Perfection continues on CBS.
Tennessee trying to play spoiler for Georgia's perfect season and the Dogs' top recruiting class. Ben Wolk of Dogs 24/7 and Ryan Callahan of Vols 24/7 here to fill us in on the recruiting battles happening on the sidelines this weekend. But before we get into that, dear viewer, please show us some love and like this video. Now, guys, both teams battling for four-star athlete Cameron Michael out of Statesboro, Georgia. He plans to commit on Thanksgiving Day. Ryan, what's the latest from Tennessee's side?
Well, this is the big weekend for Tennessee. He's supposed to be back in Knoxville on Saturday for what will be his final visit before that scheduled announcement next Thursday. And Tennessee, I think, really needs to make a big impression this weekend. It's felt like a recruitment that Tennessee had a real shot at winning for a long time now. But as it's gotten closer to commitment day, Georgia's become more of a factor and once appeared to be a little bit less of a contender. Colorado's been hanging around in this one for a while, but Georgia in particular, he gets a chance to see these two teams go head-to-head one final time, and it's a really important weekend for Tennessee. Feels like they need to make a really big move to make sure they have a chance to land him on Thursday.
Cam is, I think all eyes in Athens, Georgia will be on Knoxville this weekend to see how Cam Michael's visit goes. He was just in Athens for the Missouri game a couple of weekends ago. I think Georgia made a significant move while he was on that trip, and Georgia's certainly seeking more wide receivers, or at least one more wide receiver in the 2024 class. I think Tennessee's been in a really good spot for a really long time, so I think how this weekend goes will really dictate what that decision will be next Thursday.
Ben, Nasir Johnson flipped his commitment from Florida to Georgia. He's going to be staying in state. The Bulldogs got another top 100 player nationally. How did Kirby Smart pull this off?
I think it took time. I think that when he committed to Florida earlier in the year, Florida was prioritizing him a little bit more. I think that they saw something in him before Georgia did. He's had a really good senior season, and I think that over the last few weeks, he's taken 2 game visits to Georgia. He took an official visit this past weekend, and I think that official visit, he saw what he needed to see to realize that Georgia hasn't necessarily landed all of the interior defensive line targets that they would like in this cycle, and so they needed, to prioritize him maybe more than they had. I think that they ramped things up over the last several weeks, months. I think that Florida's regression throughout the course of the year certainly did Georgia favors, and I think a really big athletic, physical pickup for Georgia on its interior defensive line.
Tennessee's 2025 class currently ranks 14th nationally with 3 commits. Now the Vols have a star-studded list of visitors in Knoxville this weekend. Ryan, who are some of the notable 2025 names?
So some pretty big ones there, as you can see. David Sanders, the number 1 overall prospect in the 2025 class. He was at Tennessee this summer for a camp, now coming back to see his first game at Neyland Stadium. And Tennessee's kind of done a good job, I think, of emerging at least as a contender in that one since they got him on campus in June. So a real opportunity for Tennessee to establish itself as a legitimate factor in what's obviously a pretty big-time recruitment. In-state, a big-time priority, George McIntyre, the 5-star quarterback from Brentwood Academy in the Nashville area. He's a guy Tennessee's been obviously coveting for a long time. And that one, obviously for quarterbacks that commit early a lot of times, that one probably entering the final stages. So an important visit for Tennessee there as he looks to make a decision within the next few months, probably, and Alabama being Tennessee's main competition there. And as you saw on the list, Josh Petty, a big-time offensive lineman from Georgia who grew up liking Tennessee. Just a ton of big-time players coming in this weekend and some guys that Tennessee would love to make a big impression on. This is kind of the weekend everything's been aimed toward for Tennessee in recruiting all season long. I've had guys tell me about planning to be at this game for about 6 months now. So Tennessee certainly wants to make the most of what should be and what already is a really impressive visitor list.
It's a date that's been circled on a lot of calendars throughout the country, out west, in the Midwest, down south, obviously. Only 3 commitments for Tennessee right now in that 2025 class, a program that they are chasing. Georgia, number 2 in the rankings early on. Ben, how are the efforts in the 2025 class shaping up?
Well, Ryan just mentioned a few names right there that I think stand out to Georgia as well. David Sanders. I think Georgia and Tennessee are probably in the best position for David Sanders right now. Josh Petty, a Georgia guy that was just mentioned by Ryan as well. I think that Georgia has the luxury of looking ahead to the 2025 cycle probably more than most because they have 28 commitments already in the 2024 class. So down the stretch, they have less things that they're working compared to most other schools. So they've started to look ahead. They've already got 8 guys committed in the 2025 cycle. A couple of guys coming off of visits for Georgia's most recent game. Zayden Walker, the number 1 inside linebacker. Also Elijah Griffin, number 1 defensive lineman in the class. Those are 2 in-state guys from South Georgia that Georgia has really, put the pressure on. I think that they're guys that probably have slightly different decision-making timelines. I think Zayden Walker is probably closer to making a decision. And I actually think that he'll release a top list of schools here in the next couple of days or so. I think Georgia will be firmly on that list. I think Georgia is probably in the best spot right now to land Zayden Walker as it currently stands.
And the headliner on campus this weekend is the only uncommitted 5-star left in this year's cycle, and that's offensive lineman Jordan Seaton. It's an official visit for him and his second game day experience at Rocky Top. Ryan, what's the latest in his recruitment?
Yeah, I think Tennessee's done a really nice job in his recruitment of becoming one of the top contenders. I think that really has a shot at landing him. They got him on campus, as you mentioned, back in late September for the South Carolina game. And I think before that visit, there was a real question as to how much of a factor Tennessee really was. Since that visit, it's really become, I think, the race has started to narrow down a little bit, but Tennessee has really emerged as one of the teams that has a legitimate shot. So this weekend, a huge opportunity with that official visit. He's a guy that's his schedule changes week to week. You don't really know where he's going next from here, but probably another visit or 2 left. But this is certainly, with a month away, being a month away from signing day, this is a big chance for Tennessee to establish itself as one of those top contenders going into what should be a pretty heated battle down the stretch, I think, for him with a lot of heavy hitters, including Alabama, Florida, and Oregon. Definitely still in the mix, but Tennessee's got a real shot going into this weekend and needs to impress him.
Ben, one more Georgia question for you from our live chat. This comes from Shane Daniel. Thank you, Shane, for sending this in. Does it look like Georgia will get any more offensive weapons?
Well, I think Cam Michael is an interesting one because Georgia was, and Ryan could probably speak to this a little bit too, Georgia was recruiting him as a receiver sort of later than everybody else was. They saw him as a defensive back, and they kind of changed their tune when schools like Tennessee, Colorado, Texas A&M were viewing him more as a receiver, and Cam articulated that's the position that I want to play at the next level. So Georgia was a little bit late there, but he's someone that I think that they have pivoted how they've recruited him. Brian McClendon, Georgia's wide receivers coach, was definitely his main point of contact through his most recent visit. And so I think that, he's the name to watch next week if Tennessee ends up landing Cam Michael over Georgia. I would look for NC State wide receiver commit Terrell Anderson, who took an official visit a couple of weeks ago. And, Georgia's also trying to hold on to the guys that they have right now. Nitro Tuggle is getting recruited by Michigan, by Notre Dame. And so I think holding on to what you have is really important too.
All right, great stuff, guys. Ben Wilk and Ryan Callahan with the latest. And for more on these teams, check out Dogs 24/7 and Vols247.com. They got you covered on all things Georgia and Tennessee. And a reminder, 24/7 Sports is Commitment HQ. We got another one coming for you. Cree Thomas, 3-star corner and top 3 player in the state of Arizona, will be announcing his decision next Monday on the College Football Recruiting Show. That's at 5:30 Eastern, November 20th. So mark your calendars. That's right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And that's going to do it for us today on the College Football Recruiting Show. For Blair Angulo and our entire team, I'm Grace Remington. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you here next week.